This is a production of Cornell University.
So today we're very lucky to have, or for the students here to continue, our twofer, where we have two fantastic speakers. I'm so glad we're able to get them here. They'll each do kind of half the time slot. We'll trade it off. So the first speaker, Stephanie Walker, is the extension vegetable specialist and professor at the Plant Science Department in New Mexico State University. She is the co-director of the Chili Pepper Institute, chair of the annual New Mexico Chili Conference, and you'll see her research focuses on improving chili pepper cultivars through traditional breeding. I'll save both speakers. I'll introduce Ed when we get to his section, but I think they're both kind of really these great leaders in Southwest Chile, and it's a part and approach to agriculture that I just thought would be just such an interesting contrast to a lot of what the rest of what we typically see. Going to be very breeding, cultivar focused. In each of them, they are combining a lot of elements as plant breeders tend to do. But I think Stephanie looking at just kind of how you deliver a solution to growers that are facing a labor crisis, continuing to improve the crop and also kind of create a way for this huge industry in the Southwest that's very culturally relevant to keep going despite all the challenges. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Walker.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mazurek, and thank you very much for the kind introduction and invitation to speak here. So Dr. Mazurek wanted me to talk about my development of New Mex Odyssey, which is a chili cultivar that's very well adapted to mechanical harvest. Many people think as an extension specialist, it's kind of strange that I'm a breeder as well, but I am. In fact, when I took this job, I'm 75% extension. I do vegetable programming in a wide variety of topics throughout the state, but I had that 25% research component, and I decided I wanted to use it to breed chili. So I'll talk a little bit about what I've done over the last 20 years or so. First of all, this is a picture of perfectly hand-destemmed New Mexico chili. So I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but this was not mechanically harvested because we've really just started mechanically harvesting the crop. Let's see. So first of all, how many of you have been to New Mexico? All right, hey, not bad. Not bad. If you've been to New Mexico, you know that chili peppers are our heart and soul. So it's a really point of pride for the state. Chili peppers are intertwined with our culture, our heritage. We've been growing chili in that region of the world for more than 400 years. At the luncheon we just had, we talked a little bit about the land-raised chilies that were introduced more than 400 years ago. We were the first state to have an official question, red or green. So if you've been to New Mexico, if they ask you red or green, you say, I want Christmas, I want both because I like green chili and red chili with my lunch. We have it's an official state vegetable declared in 1965. And actually just in 2023, I believe we're the first state that has an official state aroma. And that's the aroma of fresh roasted green chili. So the New Mexico chili type is often incorrectly called Hatch or Anaheim. And actually, Dr. Mazurek and I had a debate about this in a proposal that we recently submitted, where most of the world knows our chili is Hatch chili. And that's because there's a certain small city in the state. It's a wonderful growing area for chili. And they have the annual Hatch Chili Festival and really have the marketing push. But really what Hatch chili is any New Mexico type chili that's grown in the Hatch area, Hatch Valley. So the New Mexico type chili is also often incorrectly called Anaheim. Drives me insane when I see seed companies selling a New Mexico chili variety as an Anaheim type. Well, that only came about because the New Mexico chili type was developed by Fabian Garcia. He actually saw the variability in chilies, land-raised chilies being grown around the state. He began selective breeding. He was the first head of the Ag Science Center at New Mexico State University, and he released New Mexico #9, which was the first New Mexico type chili. Well, he was visited by a gentleman from California who loved what he was doing, borrowed some seed, took it back to the Anaheim area of California and developed Anaheim chili. And now California continues to get credit for our our wonderful genetics from New Mexico. So we actually have two main chili industries in New Mexico, the red, that's a fully mature dried pod. And of course, the green is horticulturally mature, it's fully sized, but it's physiologically immature still. So chili, as with many vegetables and fruits, of course, it's a very labor-intensive crop. And we've had a lot of trouble getting enough labor to get out into the fields to pick this crop. And this has been a problem for a very long time. And it was really, obviously, it was recognized that mechanization was a key method to kind of level the playing fields with competing countries that had a large, inexpensive labor force. So of course, you probably already know about the Bracero program. This was established over World War II when everyone was going off to war. Foreign nationals came to pick the chili. It was originally scheduled to end. The growers in New Mexico panicked. And so this really had a push for mechanization research back in the 1950s and 1960s. We actually had a gentleman who I knew years ago, Ernest Riggs, who had the first recorded mechanical harvest of chili. So chili mechanization research has been going on for a long time. 1971, this is Wendell Krieger, developed the first patented chili picking mechanism. So back in 1978, when we had lawsuits, chili mechanization research at New Mexico State University and other institutions basically stopped. In fact, when I came back to graduate school, I was told that this was not a project I could work on because I came back wanting to work on mechanization of chili. A few private growers and industry folks continued research. And basically, we had a huge boom of chili production in the late 1980s through 1990s with about 36,000 acres. When NAFTA hit, acreage just started to plummet. And at this point, it's pretty much stabilized to about 8,000 to 9,000 acres per year. Well, this was the point that, well, let me not get ahead of myself. And we know more and more people are eating chili. So the demand for chili, including New Mexico chili, is increasing. But we're getting more and more from other countries. So back in 1998, growers and industry in New Mexico they realized we were going to crash. They actually came to New Mexico State University and we started the Chili Task Force. The Chili Task Force brought together industry, growers, researchers, and we realized we had to figure out how to fix this problem of losing acres to other countries. And this is where I got to be good friends with Ed Curry. Actually, Ed Curry first knew me because I used to be the quality control manager at the old El Paso processing plant. And I used to sign the rejection slips for his loads. So I've said ever since then, I've spent my whole career trying to make up for all those loads of Ed Curry's chili that I rejected. And hopefully I'm on the right track with that. So red chili mechanization was an early focus of the Chili Pepper Task Force. And this was actually part of my dissertation research, looking at the factors that made for better red chili mechanical harvest. And currently, most of our red chili crop in the state is mechanically harvested. It can hold up to damage. It's dried, it's ground. It's a once-over harvest late in the season. It's fairly straightforward and easy to do. The green chili has been another problem altogether. And even now, most of our chili, New Mexico green chili, is hand harvested. And boy, there's been years when the growers have not been able to get enough people out in the fields and we've lost crops. And this is a really valuable crop. So if it rots in the field, if it turns red in the field, it's a huge economic loss for the producers. So with New Mexico green chili, as I mentioned, it's harvested when it's fully sized but physiologically immature. Typically, the growers in New Mexico will get two harvests. So they'll go and they'll strip all the mature green fruit, then they'll let the plants regenerate and get a second harvest. And one real tricky thing about mechanically harvesting green chili is you must destem it. So when I say destemming, I'm referring to removing the pedestal there from the fruit. And actually, this is how Ed Curry and I first bonded, when we first met each other. And we were the only two people, I think, in the whole industry who recognized we had to get easy destemming green fruit. I mean, obviously, a green fruit in nature is not typically going to want to destem. It wants to stay on that plant and mature. Well, we need to get those pedestals off because if you don't, they go into the finished products. And it's a quality issue and a safety issue. I mean, how many of you have bitten onto a hard stem in salsa? I used to read the consumer complaint letters. all these complaints about, I had a fish hook that jammed up into my gum and I'm suing you guys. So I experienced this early in my career. So what we did as part of the Chile task force, and this was very much a collaboration with myself, with gentlemen like Ed Curry, with engineers at the USDA ARS. First of all, we looked at a lot of different machines. So what machine would most gently and efficiently pick green chili? So we looked at a lot of harvesters, particularly those that are currently being used for red chili. So my job was to look at cultivars. Do we have any commercial cultivars currently that would mechanically pick in a very efficient manner? So I looked at many, many different cultivars with many, many different machines in many fields. After I determined what varieties work best with the machine, it's like, why? What is it about these particular cultivars that make for a very efficient harvest? So then I started doing a breeding program to develop new varieties that would mechanically pick better. And finally, I'm not going to talk about today, but field management. How do we manage the fields to make for an efficient harvest? Whoops. Okay. So machine evaluation. Well, currently, we know that there's other ways you can pick chili. And when you mechanically harvest or switch to a mechanized process for a crop, you really need to match the machine to the variety. I know many people thought that if you got the perfect machine, you could pick anything. Great difference variety to variety and how well it will mechanically pick. Such as here's a tomato harvester. Some bell pepper growers are using these where they cut the plants off at the ground level and shake the peppers off. We looked at this way back in the day. Our early research really showed that an inclined double helix picking mechanism worked best for green chili. So that's the two helices at an incline going on either side of the chili plant and popping the fruit off. So here were some, so my colleagues at the USDA developed different picking mechanisms based on feedback they got from industry. Here was the couple, the disc finger, the chain finger. We also had the Hernandez that brushed the fruit off the plants, and then the Krieger, which was a double helix type that was vertical. We also heard about the young Edgar machine that was actually being used in Israel on a commercial basis to mechanically harvest red chili. So we got one of the machines here and tested it in various fields. And then this is just once again from my collaborator at the USDA. The chain and disc, they hardly picked anything off of the plants. There was no yield at all. The damage was still pretty bad on the fruit. The Krieger and Hernandez were very aggressive. They picked a lot, but man, they damaged things too. Just like got in there shredded up. By far, the machine from Israel gave us a pretty good harvest of intact fruit, fairly minimal breakage, 11% breakage. So we decided to go with the commercial Israel machine, which is now called the Edgar harvester. So I spent many seasons with my collaborators going to many fields, including those at Ed Curry's farm. And boy, we tore up a lot of green chili fields. I still have growers that give me a hard time about tearing up their fields, 20 years ago doing this research. But this was a commercial size machine. So it had 3 rows that was picking at one time. Very hard to use for breeding trials or even any type of management trials. It's once again, this is a double helix, inclined head, but just the way that it's oriented, it's very gentle to the fruit. So we get very little breakage on this. The plants are very undamaged after they're harvested with this machine. So in 2014, I had some money left. I made the command decision to have them build me, and I purchased a 1-row tractor-powered Edgar machine. So I actually had a research size picking mechanism. So I was able to really start checking different breeding lines as well as other commercial cultivars. And then happily, I was able to tear up my own fields with this machine. And I did, especially depending on the variety. So we assessed the commercial cultivars. Some of the challenges to mechanical harvest of New Mexico type chili is we want to minimize damage. As soon as you break that fruit open, it's going to start deteriorating. You lose yield. Is a second pick possible? Many growers were concerned, well, hey, I'm going to lose all the economic gain from this crop if I don't get that second pick. So if you tear up the plants too bad, is that going to be a problem? Are we leaving too much in the field? Are we harvesting too much junk? Do we have too many sticks and other debris that are coming in with the crop? And de-stemming, as I mentioned, we got to get those pedicels off of the fruit for the processed product. And about 85% of the chili in New Mexico and Arizona does go for commercial processing. So it's a very important mechanical step. And our currently available New Mexico type chilies optimum for mechanical harvest. Well, we evaluated many, many different varieties, commercial as well as breeding lines, and we found great difference in how efficient one variety to the next would be. And what we discovered is New Mex Joe Parker. It was released by Dr. Paul Boston at New Mexico State University. It hasn't been widely adopted as a commercial variety, but it did best for the machine harvest. So anyways, we looked at many of these traits that Joe Parker had, and we pursued these in breeding lines. So this is kind of the old art and science of chili breeding. So I don't do the molecular breeding, the molecular genetics. I work with folks who do. Mine is very much traditional breeding, going out in fields, looking at thousands of plants, and then picking the ones that have the attributes that I think are going to work, and then testing that. So what we found is the key plant attributes that we're looking for optimum mechanical harvest of New Mexico type green chili was strong single stems. We want those helices to go on either side of the plant. So if we have a lot of these basal branches, the low-lying branches, these bushy plants just get ripped right out of the ground, or it just shreds the chili peppers. So we wrote strong single stem. We want a little bit of an increased distance to the fruit set. If the fruit are touching the ground or close to the ground, they tend to get run over and crunched. Not good once again. And then the final magic ingredient, I guess, was the fruit attachment. So I'm not talking about pedicel attachment, but just the attachment force from the pedicel to the stem. It has to be somewhat easy so the plant can fairly easily detach from the plant. And how did I find this out? Basically, by testing. So we had hundreds of small plots of different segregating populations. We started to put them to test with the machine. That's when the best ones really basically broke out. I will quickly mention breeding considerations for mechanical de-stemming, that is removing the pedicels from the fruit. As I said, Ed Curry and I were the only ones who recognized this 20 years ago, that de-stemming chili fruit was important. And I'm very pleased to say that there are mechanically de-stemming machines in use this year that work very, very well. And another breeding consideration that we need to look at for that is having long, straight fruit, long pedicels, easy de-stemming. I've had a project for many, many years with UC Davis on getting an easier de-stemming force there for green fruit, and then efficient. You don't only want them to be able to come off, but you want them to come off completely. If the pedicel breaks, if the fruit breaks, that's a fail for us. So all this background. So this is 20 years of work, I guess, here in just a few minutes, but I'm very, very proud to say that in 2021, I released New Mex Odyssey. So it's a new New Mexico green type cultivar that has significantly higher yield of undamaged marketable fruit with a mechanical harvest system, specifically this Edgar double helix machine. It has a nice mild flavor. So most of the chili goes for processing in New Mexico. They prefer mild fruit. So 300 to 400 Scoville units is a really nice mild. It also has great New Mexico chili flavor. And really, really proud. In 2023, it was the first year of large scale mechanical harvest of green chili that went for processing, and Odyssey was a large part of that. Actually, the company in the state that has made their own machine also bought the rights to produce and sell the Odyssey seed. So we're going. Anyway, this is just quickly some of the data that showed that New Mex Odyssey did perform better than Joe Parker, which was our control because we knew it harvested very well. And AZ 1904, which is one of Ed's varieties that was by far the most widely grown green chili at the time. So it does have fewer basal branches, a higher height to the fruit set, and good fruit detachment. Odyssey post-harvest, it leaves very, very few fruit out in the field. In fact, the grower says it's actually more efficient than our hand harvest crews typically. So it's really, really exciting. Very little fruit damage. We do leave the pedestals on the fruit with Odyssey, so it does not destem easy. So we do need a mechanical destemmer. Because the fruit are harvested and leave the plants in such great condition, a second pick is possible and it has been done. And the destemming is clean, so the pedestals will pop off cleanly without breaking the fruit or the pedestal, but they're still on there, so that we need to deal with that before processing. Ongoing research that my program still has, so it's like I'm 25% research. So I know my program takes a lot more research than we should with that split. But we are working in additional varieties for mechanical harvest efficiency that I think are better. We're also working on incorporating disease resistance into these cultivars. We are working on cultivars that will destem very easily. I mean, ideally, what I want to see before I retire is leaving those pedestals on the plant in the field, like they do with mechanical harvest of tomatoes. We're also looking at different transplant methods, and I'm also working with a robotics engineer now to use robots out in the field. So I thought it was a bit pie in the sky, but he's made great progress, so we'll continue that work as well. A future of Chile. So New Mexico, Chile, I mean, it's our heart and soul in the state. We can't produce as much as that there is demand, so we could sell a lot more than we're currently able to produce. Growers are meeting a lot of the current production challenges. We have a lot of healthy soils research ongoing. Growers are adopting these regenerative soil health strategies, excuse me. Water, of course, water is an issue. Our green chili growers have transitioned to drip irrigation. They're using our water resources very efficiently. And of course, transition to mechanical harvest has begun. You know, as we speak, this is happening. And I'm really proud, a large part, this is because of all the work that was initiated by the Chile Task Force, work with Ed Curry, other growers, industry, and researchers at New Mexico State University, such as myself. So this is me, and I want to leave lots of time for Ed because he's amazing. So any questions though before Ed comes on? Yes, sir.
Familiar with Joyce Van Eck here?
I know her by name.
She so in the first year of plant breeding, as students, you take this wonderful class where you like talk to the professors, hear about their work, and she's working on breeding physalis and ground cherry, and she had this really precise molecular characterization of the fruit drop mechanism, so the position of the pedicel. So I think they're able to get like pretty close to the genes or the molecules that were allowing that fruit to just like drop off the pedicel. I wonder because they seem like it's pretty closely related to.
Oh yeah. Yeah, very much. I'm actually, so our official chili breeders, I do a lot of chili breeding, but Dennis Lozada, I know, is looking at I'll have to ask if he's talked to her and maybe collaborate with her.
Just be like the same gene doing the same thing, and then you could just knock it out. I don't know.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, I've been looking for this for 20 years out in the field. If she can find it through molecular techniques, I can retire just the same, retire happy. Thank you. Okay, yes, I will check it out. Any other questions? Yes.
Are there any trade-offs, for example, like if you're waiting for the fruit to get to maturity for seed production, does it drop off the plant or is that a concern?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. You brought that, and Ed's probably very familiar with the squishy gene, we call it, the squishy gene that, yeah, it's a gene, you know, with it. Thank you, Michael. You get it.
Everybody here knows that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, early on, a lot of folks said, oh, we should look for this trait. So it's a trait that it just causes the tissue to disintegrate as soon as ripeness occurs and they drop off. And yeah, we looked at it. It hasn't been helpful for the green chili destemming, though. In fact, it's been a concern if you try to get that into red chili cultivars. In fact, my very first, so this is a different topic, the very first cultivar I ever released was New Mex Garnet. And very proud of it. It was a paprika, highly pigmented, you know, high pigment content. And the first grower who tried it commercially applied ethanol to his field. And I went out the next day, the ground was red. There was like no fruit left on the plants. And I was absolutely horrified. I think, well, this is going to be the death of New Mex Garnet. But we learned just don't apply the growth regulators that cause fruit drop. So So yeah, but so I'm thinking, I guess that one though, I know Paul Boston worked on that with I think it was the Bailey chiltepine had that trait. And so it depends if you're going to harvest the fruit that have dropped, which of course we don't because of food safety concerns. It's helpful, but usually, yeah, it just hasn't been helpful. Any other, yes?
Do you personally like New Mexico chilies? Do you have more of a passion for the research that draws you, or are you also out there eating them?
Oh yeah, I love them. I can't take them as hot as I used to. In fact, actually, it was funny. I talk about how New Mexico Odyssey has great New Mexico chili flavor, and it does. But I had people say, "This doesn't taste good. There's no heat. So there's not supposed to be heat. We're just supposed to get the flavor." But I kind of, so I'm an extension person. But I kind of came to this, with this deep love of chili from working in industry for 10 years. And like I said, that's when I first got to know Ed Curry, rejecting your loads of chili. Not because his chili was bad, your chili was amazing, but we had really strict protocols in place about excessive breakage or excessive stems at the time. And so just watching tons and tons of chili go through the sorting belts and really seeing, firsthand that you could really make this variety better for processing it more efficiently if you do some tweaks to the genetics of it. And that's about the time Ed came in with AZ20 and took the industry by storm. So all the older varieties just kind of went by the wayside. And since then, people have been buying Ed's seed and Ed's genetics, which even though Ed's from Arizona, we consider him an honorary New Mexican. So even calling it AZ20, Ed, we'll forgive you for that too. Any other? So yeah, so I love chili, red and green, Christmas all the way. Any other questions or comments? Got to leave time for Ed. Ed has amazing samples, and hey, thank you all very much. Thanks for the invitation, Michael.
Sharing that story of she's been a tremendous force in taking a change she wanted to see and getting it made. There's a couple questions in the chat. I think we'll save them for the end. I'll also note that if folks want to come up to my lab kind of at the end of this, if there's some overtime, we'll just be upstairs in 2:45 if everybody's on a roll. And now I'd like to introduce Ed Curry. Many of you met him at lunch, but I can say so. Ed grew his first chili crop decades ago, and then realized the benefit of certified seed and what a really great seed, the difference can make for a grower. From there, he has gone on to double down on that to create this amazing organic chili farm and seed breeding operation in Arizona that has been this hub for everybody that wants to come together, work on chili, and that has really been one of the great keys, I think, to Ed being able to develop fantastic varieties of chili that are helping growers stay in business, how to use water efficiently, integrate a lot of production practices to do that, and just these very fantastic force for Chile in the Southwest. Ed is also doing a lot with how to conserve water in Arizona, spending a lot of time on the Arizona Water Board, and somehow still has the time to train me a little bit to help breed chili as a consultant. I've been working with Ed for about a year now, but I will let him take it over. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you, Michael. So many of y'all I met at lunch. I'm country boy to the bone. Everything I learned was via experience. I passed one college course in my whole life, and that was at a Christian college, and it was the Life and Times of Apostle Paul. That's the only college course I've ever passed. An old fella told me when I was young, as I was heading to college, thinking I was going to stay there, he said, "Don't let college interfere with your education." Young man, I know you. How are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you. Yeah. So So the point is there's lots of ways to learn. And at a very early age, I followed a man named Phil Villa around the field, and another man called Everett Wood around the field. And then later, I met Dr. Ben Villalone, Texas A&M, followed him around the field. Today, I lost Phil in 2013. Next to my father, he was the most influential man in my life. Phil and I spent hours and hours and hours in the field. The number one thing, I'm going to talk about basics first. Passion. If you don't have passion for what you do, get out of here. And I mean it. You better have passion, because you cannot learn if you don't have passion. If you're here just nimby-pimby, wishy-washy, you won't learn. Now, I said that, and I like to be positive, so I will say this. I met many of you at lunch, right? And you were passionate, and I loved it, and it inspires me to, I'm going to be 70 shortly. I have spent my life, I was 8 years old when my dad, my neighbor, and myself flew in a little Cessna 172, and it might have been a 182. I kind of forgot what it was, but it was a Cessna. And we flew to Hatch, New Mexico, which from our valley was 2 valleys over. And if you've ever been in the Southwest, there's mountain valleys. Well, we flew into Hatch, we landed, and a man named Jim Lytle and his wife, Junie, were the seed source. And my dad said, we got to have better seed. Now, let me take you back. How much time? We got 3 days too? What do we got here?
We can do any encore past 110 and 245 Emerson upstairs.
Okay, so to give you an idea where I'm going is the industry, and it's important you understand this. The industry in Mexico to Spain to New Mexico in the early 1900s, maybe late 1800s, to Fabian Garcia, who I love that you start with him. Later, we had Roy Nakayama, and many things happened there, and I'll touch on that a little bit. But here's the point, is the industry was spread by drying the chili on the rooftops. We've all seen it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? You picture a little Mexican hacienda and you picture chili on the top, Gregor, right? Yeah. Well, guess what? It was 2 things. Number 1, Mama went up, got a chili, put it in the beans, kept the seed. Yeah, kept the seed. So this went on for generation after generation after generation as you kept your seed. What happens in a wild growing system is, we talked about it, variance. We get outcrosses, right? So it was hard to keep a very pure system. It would blend, it would intermix. And so the seed that we were getting, some would be this long, some would be this long, some would be mild. And that's not true. None of them were that long. In those days, the longest one was about like that. But the point is, some were mild, some were hot. There was no consistency. If we were to spread this industry, and I got to stop just a minute. Young lady, it finally dawned on me. I seen you last year too. Yeah. So I kept thinking, where did I see you? I was in the field last year on the tour. But so the importance here, guys, is that this industry, for it to spread to the north, to the east, to New York, to Pennsylvania, had to be consistent. The meat and potato German folks didn't want a hot chili. And if they got one hot chili out of a can, they were done. It wasn't going to spread, it wasn't going to happen. So what put myself on the map, 8 years old, I heard my father talk. And think about this, I always like to intermingle stuff. One day you'll all be parents, and maybe some of you are now, I don't know. But remember, little ears are listening to your passion, back to passion. So remember that. And this little guy at 8 years old said, Can barely hear in the back seat of that airplane. But I remember the neighbor, Kenny McDaniel, and my dad's conversation. The fields were even. Dr. Roy Nakayama, New Mexico State, where Steph is now, had bred a New Mex 6 into a selection he called 6-4. It was more pure, it was more consistent. The yield was better, the fruit type was better. The heat consistency was not better. And I say that with importance because if, again, the average Pennsylvanian was going to open a can of chili or go to a Mexican restaurant and get a hot chili, they weren't coming back. So Phil and I now roll forward. I'm in 8th grade. And I meet this man named Phil Villa. He's walking the fields with my dad. Anybody ever hear of the chili brand called Ortega? Now, let me take you to California for just a second. I ramble. I don't ever use notes. I always ask, where's your notes? I don't have notes. They're up here. I lived it, So Ortega. The Ortega brand started way back with the Hugh Blind folks in the early or mid to late 1970s. By 77, they had encapsulated the brand Ortega, and everybody liked it. Well, where did the word Ortega come from? Let's roll back. 1800s, Anaheim, New Mexico. A man named Manuel Ortega created the first chili cannery in his house. Yeah. By the way, a Baptist preacher in 1856 designed the first seal on a can of a tin can. Manuel Ortega took it to the next step in the later 1800s to early 1900s. If you ever go to Ventura, California, go down on the Ventura River, and his first actual processing plant is preserved as a piece of history there. That's where they came up with the name Ortega. So the Ortega brand was important. I started working with Phil. I'm in 8th grade. I'm walking with Phil and Everett Wood. Met both of them that year. Again, you got to understand, my folks came from Oklahoma in 1952, had about starved out in dryland farming, raising dryland peanuts, and it was tough. So they moved to Arizona as sharecroppers. They were young. They were like 19 and 20. And they moved to Arizona, started sharecropping cotton. Well, in those days, cotton was under the government program, so you had to have a cotton base. If you didn't have a base, you couldn't grow cotton. That's simple. Well, my dad says, he's quite progressive, my father, and he says, a neighbor was growing chili, so he started learning about chili. I was born in 1956, February of 56. By 57, my dad planted his first crop. Failure. Didn't get a stand. Getting chili up is hard. Cold tolerance. Who talked about cold tolerance? Where are we at? There you go. Yeah, cold tolerance, Cold spring, it was hard. It didn't work. My dad wasn't a quitter. 1958, planted again. That year he got it up. Had a stand. All of 10 acres. Gregor?
Is there?
He got almost to the end of the crop. And now some of you were talking about disease. Started raining, rain. Bacteria spot, Xanthomonas, Campestria. Let's just get technical. We're in a technical group. My dad's joke was it dropped all the leaves except for right on the top. He said you could hunt rabbits underneath it, That was his first successful crop. But he made enough to pretty well pay his bills in 1958. Now roll forward. Now it's 1966, 67. Hugh Blind now owns what was Coastal Valley Canning in Oxnard. They buy the cannery in our valley, which was at the Douglas Bisbee Airport. S&S brand, Bob and Shorty Kenyon, started. A man with a 3rd grade education, genius. mechanical genius. Him and his wife knew how to handle people. They used hundreds of people at that time in the factory, but they built it from nothing. My dad and I ended up providing about 75% of all the chili that went in that cannery. I walked many fills with Phil Villa and Everett Wood. Everett was in the red industry for dehydrated paprika and chili. Phil was in the green industry with Hugh Blind. He had actually worked for Pito Seed, which had since sold to Bayer Monsanto. So the history was deep and the folks I was working with. And all I had to do was be a sponge, learn. And I walked and I walked and I walked and I spent hours with them. After school, I wasn't playing football one year. Then I went back to the field and I walked and walked, because in the fall, that's when they came to look at the chili. So we walked and we looked and we'd seen different kind, and Phil started teaching me. Now, I'm going to split off here just a minute. Phil played a game with me. He would make me stand at one spot, look in a field of chili, and I had to find 100 plants that were hot out of a mild variety. We were trying to stabilize it. It was a game he played. He wanted me to understand plant morphology. From a distance, I had to look at the leaf, point to him. He would walk over and check and see if it was hot. I got 98 out of 100. He said, "You're in." It was all about plant morphology. What am I saying, guys? I'm here to teach you. I'm going to teach you. Look at the small thing. Phil taught me to look at the leaf, look at the plant habit. Everett called them orangutans when they stuck out the top and the plant would be all goofy. So we looked at the little things. Guess what that one day of finding 98 hot plants did for me? It taught me, this is going to go on a couple hours, I better get ready. It taught me that, oh, did it turn off? There, sorry about that. There we go. It taught me that the little things were important and that plant morphology is important. We talked about variants during lunch, right? We talked about all kinds of variants. It was fun because what has changed this world in molecular plant breeding started with the eyeball. It started with recognizing what's in a field. If you don't want to be in the field, don't get in plant genetics. And you find it fun in the field because you see things and you learn things and the plant talks to you. It's, you know, and by the way, when you're raising kids, it's kind of the same thing. It's kind of, his kiddos are like my grandkids. I love those kids, they're fun. But so the whole idea was, here I was, a young man, walking field, listening, learning. And then I ended up married, had some little ones, and I was back at the farm. Phil Villa comes to me and says, "Ed, would you grow some seed blocks for me?" "I'd love to, Phil." He knew I wasn't going to say no. He knew I was going to say yes. That was 1979. From 79 to 86, we were working with Ortega Genetics. 1985-ish, maybe late 84, Nestle's bought Hugh Blind. Hugh Blind was the A1 steak sauce and the Grey Poupon. You remember the Grey Poupon, you know? And that was Hugh Blind. Then Nestle's buys it because they wanted the A1 label. And they also wanted the Ortega label. Now we start to see a change. And the change in the industry was that it wasn't that a given brand name had to be produced by the same company. Absolutely changed the world Stephanie and I work in. And all of a sudden, Ortega chili could be produced in Peru with Luis Pedro's. It could be produced anywhere as long as the can had the specs and it had the label. Up to that time, we had not seen that. If you owned a cannery, you owned your label. In today's world, guys, Olam, what used to be Border Foods, produces most of the label chili. Bueno Foods in New Mexico, and I love those folks, Stephanie works with them, they produce a more New Mexican type chili. They still own their brands, and I'm thankful we still have companies that haven't blossomed out into just everybody doing their thing. So the genetic world became more and more and more important. It became important that we had stabilized heat. And now I'll jump to, I brought a few chilies, guys. When I talk about heat, first off, let me start with the little one, okay? Anybody know what this is in this little bottle here? It's chiltepin. See, they're just little bitty beads. They're smaller than a blueberry. They're a kind of a packed like pistol Pete. They're pretty hot. But it's a beautiful heat. I just had one on the sandwich. I carry these things because you folks don't know how to eat over here, but you know, that's a whole nother subject, you know. Not just kidding, just kidding. You folks eat really good, but you add a chiltepin to it, it's better, I promise. The spice of life. So the chiltepin, I start with that the chiltepin was grown, not cultivated, by the Lord himself in our mountains. It was harvested and still is to this day by native Mexicans in the Sonora Mountains. There's a little bit in Arizona up above Tubac and Tumacacri, just this side of Nogales. As a whole, these are harvested in Mexico wild. There's a fable that birds have to eat this, run the seed through their digestive tract, and then that prepares the seed to germ. I suspect there's some truth to it. What do you think, Steph? Yeah.
There's some, yeah, you don't, it doesn't have to, but it helps.
But it helps, yeah. So these things are spread wild throughout our mountain ranges. And the Mexicans pick them. These things are worth about, what, $50, $60 a pound right now? Something like that. Now, a pound goes a long way, but I start with this. This is an annum, by the way. And I start with this. So here we are, pretty small, right? I love the heat in this. By the way, one of the things I love to give in a talk is not all capsaicins are created equal. When you eat a hot chili, all of us know that sometimes it burns our lips, sometimes it burns in the back of our throat, sometimes it burns a long, long time. And sometimes it burns all the way through. Woo! Sorry, Steph. I should have told you to tell them it's X-rated, you know. But sometimes it gets you all the way through. Birds do not taste capsaicin the way their beak is, and that so a bird can eat the hottest chili there is. And believe you me, some falls before we start harvest, as the chili turns red like this, the yellow-breasted blackbirds will just surround us. We'll have droves of them trying to get the seed. So we have to sometimes keep somebody out there with a shotgun or boom guns and keep them stirred up and keep them out. So the idea here is that from this to this to this, and I should just take them out of the bag, and we'll talk. And I'm not good to use my PowerPoint, but I'll show you something. This is called carne duro. This was a double recessive gene. You know how we think it's double recessive? I can't prove to you. But when we keep losing a gene and we have to go back and back and back, finally we come to the conclusion, you know what, that had to be a double recessive. This one, if I cut it, you will see, and I'll pass this around. Ah, perfect example. Look here, guys. Are we losing part?
Yep, we're a little bit over time.
I just got warmed up.
Yeah. But so I say at 15 after, as the other folks will start coming in, so.
Over
we'll
here.
have to-
Well, hey, guys, it was fun. Just remember, you'll live longer if you eat chili.
These slides.
Okay.
Right? Because the part you didn't touch on, that is, part of it is the scale of things is massive. And also for the seed company. Right, and there's the scale of the production, but also in the seed world. So in the cannery and seed production, you have beds of seed. So I think in what it's talking about, not to be missed, is the scale where how many tons of seed is in each of these beds.
About 1,000 pounds.
About 1,000 pounds, and you had how many and built how many more?
I think there's 8 or 9 now there.
Yeah, 8 or 9,000 pounds. Little tiny seeds.
Per shift.
Per shift.
Yeah.
Want to make sure to have that element to it. But
Is there, can I change the slide from here? That's my grandson right there, and we're working on the next generation to get him pumped up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but keep in mind, you have 1 minute left. Use it wisely.
Use it wisely. Well, that's simple. Eat more chili. So right here, I want to show you part of what I brought and why I brought it. So in here is a vestigial vein. You guys know the word vestigial, right? I don't have to tell y'all, many audiences, I have to explain that. That was also another one hard to capture. But as we captured it, guess what's in that vestigial vein? Flavor. Beyond. My guys call this bubble gum. They like it so good. And so capturing that was a feat in itself.
And if anyone wants to try it, they could probably come to 245 Emerson right upstairs. And Ed has some more to share.
Are we going upstairs?
Yep.
All right, we're going upstairs.
Exactly. Anybody that wants to have the encore, it's upstairs. Thank you, Ed.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.